So, why are we so afraid of death? I mean, it's one of the biggest, most universal questions out there, right? For literally thousands of years, philosophers have been trying to talk us out of this fear. Today, we're going to dive into one of the most elegant arguments ever designed to do just that. And then, we're going to see why this seemingly perfect solution might have a fatal flaw.
Okay, so check this out. This quote comes from a conversation with the brilliant philosopher David Hume while he was literally on his deathbed, and he wasn't scared, not at all. Why? Well, he was holding on to this ancient idea, one he borrowed from the Roman philosopher Lucretius. The thought of just not existing anymore didn't bother him any more than the thought of not having existed before he was born. And that simple idea, that's the key to this whole thing.
This idea actually has a name. It's called the symmetry argument, and it's often presented as this kind of philosophical cure for our anxiety about dying. It asks you to imagine your entire existence as just a brief flash of light, sandwiched between two identical, infinite stretches of total darkness.
The logic here is just incredibly simple and powerful. Think about it. You already went through an entire eternity of not being before you were born, and it didn't bother you one bit because, you weren't there to be bothered. So the argument goes, why on earth should the identical eternity of not being that comes after you die be any different? If that first void was no big deal, then the second one shouldn't be either. See? It's a perfect, soothing symmetry.
Sounds pretty convincing, doesn't it? It feels so neat, so logical. But this is where we take a very sharp turn. Because a lot of thinkers have looked at this tidy little argument and said, hang on a second. Is the abyss that came before your life truly identical to the one that comes after?
So the first big crack in this symmetrical wall comes from the philosopher Tom Nagel. And he says that when we compare these two voids, we are missing a huge, crucial piece of the puzzle, the idea of deprivation.
What Nagel is getting at here is that death isn't just this passive state of nothingness. No, it's an event. It's something that actively takes away from you. It robs you of your future, it deprives you of all the experiences, the joys, the sorrows, all the time you could have had.
And this is where that beautiful symmetry completely breaks down. You couldn't have been born, say, 100 years earlier than you were. Genetically, that just would have been a totally different person. So that time before your birth isn't time you lost, but you could have lived longer. That potential future time feels like a real loss, a genuine deprivation. And just like that, the symmetry is shattered.
But the argument against symmetry goes even deeper than just lost time. The real issue, it turns out, might not be the voids themselves, but the perspective, the angle from which we're looking at them.
And I just love this analogy from the source material. It goes like this. A hole in a piece of Swiss cheese is different from the hole in the ozone layer. Not because the holes themselves, the voids are different. A void is a void. The difference is what surrounds them. The cheese is different from the ozone layer. The two voids of non-existence are the same. What's different is the life that they bookend.
Let's break that down. From the inside, so to speak, from the perspective of the void itself, sure, they're identical. Once you're gone, there's no you to notice anything. But from the perspective of the world, of your family and friends, there is a massive difference. Nobody missed you before you were born, but they will absolutely miss you after you're gone. And that difference changes everything.
And this brings us to the most important viewpoint of all, our own, right here, right now, while we are alive. From where we're standing, those two voids look completely different. The future isn't some abstract nothingness. For us, it is deeply, personally, and emotionally charged.
This right here, this is the real heart of the critique. The past, the time before we were born, that's just a historical fact. It's a story that happened without us. But the future, even the part of it we won't be around to see, is absolutely loaded with everything we care about. It's filled with our projects, our dreams, our ambitions, our relationships.
And we're not talking about abstract ideas. We're talking about the concrete stuff that keeps us up at night. These are the things that make the thought of our future non-existence feel so different. We worry about our legacy, our kids, what happens to the things we've built. The past just doesn't carry that kind of personal weight for us. Our future does.
So all of this leads to a really powerful conclusion. The whole attempt to shrink our fear of death down to a simple fear of nothing is a kind of philosophical sleight of hand. It's a trick, and it completely misses the entire point of what we're actually afraid of.
So look at how this trick works. The philosophers say, okay, first, let's separate death from the actual process of dying, so we can just ignore all the pain and suffering. Then, let's ignore all the future potential you're losing. And finally,
Let's get rid of any fear of the unknown or any hope for an afterlife, and once you've stripped all of that away, poof, you're left with nothing.
But here's the kicker. All those things we just stripped away, the pain, the lost potential, the fear, the hope, that's not just background noise. That is the fear of death. To dismiss those concerns as nothing is basically the same as dismissing everything we value about life itself.
So in the end, the fear of death isn't this single, simple thing we can erase with a clever argument. It's way more like a complex, tangled web of all our anxieties and hopes, everything that is tied directly to how much our life means to us, right here and now.
And that leaves us with a final, really important question. Maybe the goal isn't to use logic to try and solve our fear of death, to make it go away. Maybe the goal is to actually listen to that fear and to try and understand what it's telling us about the incredible, precious life we are so lucky to be living.